Right now, the Chinese government is taxing condoms, offering bonus points on school entrance exams for having multiple kids, and deploying state officials to call young women on the phone, one by one, to ask why they aren't pregnant yet. The trigger for this sudden panic is simple math. After centuries of continuous upward growth, China's massive population has officially started to shrink. This rapid demographic contraction threatens to halt China's global expansion just as it is getting started. There is a general demographic rule. As societies gain wealth, better education, and more opportunities, their citizens naturally have fewer children. This scatter plot graph maps national wealth against birth rates. You can see rich nations like the US, Japan, and France clustered predictably at the bottom right. And then there's China. Its birth rate dropped 50 years early, hitting the levels of a highly developed nation before its economy actually got rich. This chart now shows the consequence of that early drop, a metric called the dependency ratio. This measures the balance of working-age adults to the children and retirees they support. Right now, China sits at a 45, meaning there are 4.5 adults generating tax revenue for every one child and one elderly person. That balance funded the country's rise. But dropping the birth rate prematurely has left a massive hole in the future workforce, threatening the foundation of the economy. The origin of this crisis traces back to the 1960s, following the catastrophic Great Leap Forward famine. When the starvation ended, a massive baby boom followed, with families averaging 6 or 7 kids. Beijing panicked. Social scientists who understood natural population curves had largely been jailed or exiled in political purges. Left without them, the government handed population policy to a missile scientist. He used a flawed mathematical model to predict the population would swell to 4.5 billion people and cause mass starvation. This unchecked engineering logic paved the way for the most drastic population control experiment in human history. Grave. To enforce a strict one-child policy, the state deployed military shock brigades village to village. They didn't offer suggestions. They utilized physical coercion and state violence. The scale of the program was enormous. The government conducted over 300 million forced abortions and sterilized 1 out of every 3 married women of childbearing age. This is a state capable of massive technocratic projects, yet run by a bureaucracy that performed hundreds of millions of forced procedures based on a mathematical error. The survivors of that policy are today's working adults. They are a generation of only children marrying other only children. That means a single married couple will eventually be responsible for 4 aging grandparents and 2 parents. This 4-2-1 burden means young adults expect their future wealth to be drained by elder health care. They cannot afford to have multiple kids of their own, rendering the government's new cash incentives ineffective. The government effectively used violence to stop people from having children, but they have no way to force them to start again. This bar chart maps out the thresholds for demographic danger. When this number hits 60, the burden of retirees triggers a national crisis. That's France today. Hitting 70 means a steady national decline, which is what Japan is currently facing. By the year 2100, the UN projects that China's ratio reaches 128. That is nearly double the level of Japan's current crisis. The UN projects China's population will halve by the end of the century. As the workforce vanishes, national wealth will be pulled away from military expansion and innovation and into the care of retirees. From ancient Greece all the way to modern Russia, declining powers have often turned aggressive or paranoid to protect their receding influence. A shrinking China may be less stable than a rising one. There is a proven workaround for a collapsing workforce. Countries like the US and France maintain demographic balance by allowing in millions of working-age immigrants. But China's immigration rate is actually negative. The regime believes that letting in outsiders would undermine their cradle-to-grave social control and the cultural purity they view as essential to their rule. They view the only mathematically viable cure for their demographic decline as a threat to their authoritarian power. So Beijing is now facing a choice. They can maintain their rigid, single-party autocracy, but they must accept that the country would become a massive, shrinking nursing home. Or they can loosen their iron grip and allow the systemic cultural change necessary to replenish the population. Xi Jinping is facing a choice between the survival of the party's current system and the future of the nation.